Okay, class. So this was Henry Folds. He introduced the use of powder dusting in terms of entrapment and bypass operation. And follows Alphonse Bertillon from 1853 to 1914, specifically in the year 1882. He develops his anthropometric identification system. So the physical measurement, body measurement in bone, measurement in 1887, Coroners Act established that coroners were to determine the cause of sudden, violent, and unnatural death. Arthur Conan Doyle also published the first Sherlock Holmes story. So in 1887, whenever there is violent death or sudden death or unnatural death, it is required that the cause of death must be studied. Not unless it is a natural death, then no need to further study the cadaver. So in 1888, anthropometry of Alphonse Bertillon, a system using various measurement of physical features and bones, used was used throughout the US and Europe. Using the system, a criminal's information could be reduced to a set of numbers. And in 1889, Alexander Lacazan shows that marks on bullets could be matched to those within rifle gun barrel. So specifically, if the bullet recovered from the crime scene has 5 Lansen grooves and the suspected firearm has only 4 Lansen grooves or has 6 Lansen grooves, let's say for example, then from that point we can say that the firearm or that the bullet found or recovered from the crime scene is not fired or was not fired from the suspected firearm because they did not match with its number of rifling. And in 1892, we have here Juan Vucetich, an Argentinian police officer, is the first to use fingerprints as evidence in a murder investigation. He created a system of fingerprint identification, which he termed dactyloscopy. So it is Juan Vucetich who named fingerprint identification as dactyloscopy. And in 1883, page 107 of your book, we have here, no, 1892, we have here Sir Francis Galton. From 1822 to 1911, he published his classic textbook, Fingerprints, and followed by Hans Gross, the father of criminalistics, in 1893. He published Criminal Investigation and coined the term criminalistics. So, criminalistics. Thus, Hans Gross is the father of criminalistics. And we have here Dr. Edward Piotrowski, or Piotrowski, publishes his textbook on bloodstain pattern recognition in 1895. So, in this bloodstain pattern, we can determine the direction and the amount of force used to produce that blood pattern on walls or in any background. And in 1897, we have Hermann Welker, shows his own fingerprints taken in 1897, match those taken in 1856, more or less 40 years ago, thus supporting the findings of William Herschel, which states that fingerprints does not change. So kung ano yung fingerprint nyo, nung kapapanganak nyo, around 6 months, is ayun pa rin ang fingerprint nyo hanggang sa pagtanda nyo. So, the only difference is pwedeng lumaki lang siya, but the pattern is still the same. So, pwedeng lumaki, but the pattern again is still the same. There's no change in its pattern. So, in 1898, Paul Jeserich used microscope for ballistics comparison. So, using microscope, we know for a fact that microscope has lenses, just like the lenses found in telescope. However, these lenses magnifies small objects, small or minute details. So, whenever it magnifies minute details, we can clearly see minute characteristics or the individual characteristics of bullet or shells. And in 1898, still, same year, Hans Gross publishes Criminal Psychology. So as you can see, maraming book si Hans Gross. Criminal Investigation, Criminalistics, pangatlo si Criminal Psychology. In 1899, Sir Edward Richard Henry from 1850 to 1931 devised a fingerprint classification system that is the basis for those used in Britain and America today. So we have lots of contributors in the study of fingerprints. However, they have different classification and depending on the country they're in. So in 1901, human blood grouping. The blood type A, the blood type B, and the blood type O was discovered by Karl Landsteiner and adapted for the use of bloodstains by Dieter Max Richter. So, who created the blood grouping or blood group typing? Blood typing, it is Karl Landsteiner. And in 1901, same year, we have Paul Allen Huth, who derives method to distinguish between human and animal blood. So if we have recovered blood at the crime scene, we can determine with the use of precipitin test whether or not that blood is or that blood came from human or animal. And still in 1901, we have Sir Edward Richard Henry. He became head of Scotland Yard and adopts fingerprint identification system in place of anthropometry. So it changed, they shifted from the use of anthropometry, they shifted into fingerprint identification as means of personal identification because fingerprint is conclusive unlike body measurement. And still in 1901, we have Galton and Henry system of fingerprint identification, officially used by Scotland Yard and is the most widely used fingerprinting method today. So, Harry Jackson becomes the first person in England to be convicted by fingerprint evidence. So, who's the first person convicted by fingerprint evidence in England? It is Harry Jackson. And in United States, 1 year after, it is who was that in US? In US, it was Thomas Jennings in 1910 pala, in 1910. So, 1903, the first systematic use of fingerprint of criminal identification in the United States begins in the New York State prison system. And in 1904, Oscar and Rudolph Adler developed the benzidine test for blood. So we have already enumerated two types of blood test. First is the precipitin test. The use of the precipitin test is to determine whether or not a blood is human blood or an animal blood. Then second is the benzidine test, a test to determine whether or not the red colored material is a blood or not. That is the invention of Oscar and Rudolf Adler in 1904. And in 1909, we have here the first school of forensic science funded by or founded by Rudolf Archibald Price. It is in Switzerland. And in 1910, Victor Balthazar and Marcel Lambert published first study on hair, including microscopic studies from most animals. First legal case ever involving hair also took place following this study. So we can determine a particular hair, whether or not it is a human hair or an animal hair, with the use of what equipment? With the use of microscope. So, okay, with the use of microscope, we can determine the parts of human hairs. So, human hairs has a thicker inner part. Unlike with animal hair, it has lesser parts and thinner inner membrane. In 1910, we have Albert Osborne. He lays down the principle of document examination in his book Question Document. So whenever we encounter the word question document, the issue here is the establishment whether or not a particular document is authentic or not, whether or not a particular handwriting is authentic or not, or whether or not a particular signature is authentic or not. Also, we may also include here the age of that document. Kasi meron din ang nagsasabi, this document was uh, original, especially mga hindi pirmado, and was released almost may 15 years na nasa akin to. So, pagka yun ang sinasabi niya, then the examination that the QD or the document examiner will be conducting is the uh, quality test. So, iti-test niya yung papel kung totoo bang 50 years old na yung papel. So, how do we determine a paper, 50 years old paper compared with recent paper? Siyempre, ibase nyo sa kulay. Mostly, yung mga 50 years old na document dahil nanggaling sa kahoy ang mga papel at pagka ang kahoy ay nagkakaedad na, nangingitim, di ba? Same is true with papers. Habang nagkakaedad ang papel, pagka bagong gawa yung papel, puting-puti. Habang tumatagal yan, nagba-brownish, nangingitim, di ba? So that's one way of determining whether or not a particular document or particular aged document is authentic or not. And another thing is the quality of ink. Titignan din natin yung quality ng ink kasi as time pass by, nag-fade din yung ink. Unlike yung mga bagong printed na material, clear na clear yung printed na ink niya. Depende na lang sa printer din kung medyo sira na rin yung printer. So here comes now Thomas Jennings. He became the first US citizen convicted of a crime by the use of fingerprint evidence. So in US, the first person to be convicted of fingerprint evidence is Thomas Jennings. And in England, it is Harry Jackson. So Harry Jackson is in 1902. Thomas Jennings is in 1910. So 1910. Ayan. 1910. And in 1912, Victor Balthazar realized that tools used to make gun barrels never leave the same markings. So means to say it leaves different markings. So the tools used in making barrel leaves different traces or markings on each of the barrel. Hindi pare-pareho yung mga markings na ginagawa nila sa lahat ng barrel. Kahit na pare-pareho yung material na ginagamit, syempre nag-wear and tear yung tools in making that barrel, which now results in the difference of all the barrel. So how do we create barrel? Paano ba ginagawa ang barrel? So first, tubo yan. Tapos second is bubutasin yung tubo. So they drill and bore it. So bore ang tawag, bubutasin. Tapos after the boring process, so iba yung material na gagamitin ha, iba yung instrument na gagamitin for the boring process, pagbutas sa barrel. And second, after nabutasan yan, palalawakin yung butas according to the caliber na gusto nung manufacturer. Kung gusto niya 9mm, i-bore niya, bubutasin niya according to 9mm diameter. Diba? So, ayun. Next sa boring o pagbubutas is reaming. Lalawakin niya yung butas. And after na lumawak yung butas, the next instrument to be used now is the riffling instrument. So these are now used to make your rifflings. Yan. Now, as these materials or as these instruments are continuously used in making gun barrels, they wear and tear. So this now, the wear and tear of this instrument now produces or results in the difference among each of the barrels being manufactured. So magkakaiba na ngayon yung mga individual characteristics ng barrel. So okay lang yung class characteristics na number ng barrel. So pagka 4 Lansing groups, okay lang yan. Magkakapareho silang 4 Lansing groups, 5 Lansing groups, 6 Lansing groups. Okay lang yan. Pero yung mga individual characteristics is observable as caused by the wear and tear of the instruments used in creating the barrel. So ngayon, dahil magkakaiba na yung mga individual characteristics ng mga barrel, and in connection with Locard's principle of exchange, syempre, that whenever there's a contact, it leaves a trace, syempre, lahat ng bullet dumadaan sa barrel. So, pagdaan ng bullet sa barrel, matatransfer na yung individual characteristic ng barrel dun sa bala. So, from that, we can determine the individual characteristics of each bullet din. So, a bullet fired from another firearm cannot be similar with a bullet fired from a different firearm. So, in short, no firearms are exactly the same. And it follows that no cartridge cases and no bullets, no two bullets, and no two cartridge cases of different gun has similar characteristics. So pagka pinutok yan gamit ang dalawang magkaibang baril, kahit na parehong 9mm pero magkaibang baril, magkaiba rin ang magiging individual characteristics nila. Just like your fingerprint. So kahit na pareho ang nanay at tata nyo, kahit kambal pa kayo, pwedeng pareho na ang itsura nyo, kulay nyo, pananamit nyo, lahat ng mga interest nyo, pwedeng pareho kayo dyan, pero sa fingerprint nagkaiba. So same is true with the firearms. Pwedeng pare-pareho kayong 9mm, pareho yung number ng rifling nyo, pero doon sila nagkaiba sa individual characteristics, which we can only observe through the use of comparison microscope. So in 1913, Victor Baltasar published his belief that each fired bullet carries unique marks, syempre as a result of the difference among the barrel. Yung kakaibang barrel, syempre magkakaiba rin yung ipupulus na bala. In 1920, we have here physicist John Fisher. He invented helixometer. What is helixometer? Helixometer is a ballistics instrument used for measuring the pitch of rifling of a rifled bore. So, mini-measure niya kung ilan ba yung pitch of rifling. Gaano ba ah, kahigpit yung rifling ng bala. So, yan ang gamit ng helixometer. Same year, we have Sacco and Vanzetti. Sacco and Vanzetti case brings ballistics to the public's attention. The case highlights the value of newly developed comparison microscope. So, nagkaroon na tayo ng comparison microscope in 1920. And in 1923, first police crime lab established in Los Angeles. So, in the Philippines, ang counterpart nito is your forensics crime laboratory, forensics group laboratory. Yan. So, what was the first police crime lab established? It is the Los Angeles Police Crime Lab. So, being a crime lab, it is where we further process and examine forensic evidence. So, dito natin pinaprocess ang mga ballistics evidence such as spent shell, bullet, firearms, DNA, blood, poisons, chemicals, fingerprint, shoe print, footprint, wala pa silang dentures. Mostly, mga private dentist ang may record ng mga dentures natin. So far, yun pa lang ang hawak ng forensics group ng Pilipinas. But in other countries, of course, we know for a fact that they are advanced, especially yan, mga United States. So, iba na sa kanila, mayroon na silang mga anthropometry, kasama na sa kanila yung mga body measurement. Sa atin, fingerprint pa lang. Sa kanila, kasama na ang mga dental records. Sa atin, yung dental records natin, nasa mga kanya-kanyang private dentist pa lang natin. Wala pa sa government. Wala pa sa crime lab. And in 1923, we have Fry versus United States. This case sets standard for the admission of scientific evidence into the United States courtrooms. So, yan. So, meron na tayong standards na kailangan ng korte for it to admit our forensic evidence. So, in your evidence, you will be learning later on, in your subject evidence, the admissibility of evidence. Ano ba yung requirement ng court bago niya i-admit ang isang ebidensya? And in your evidence, it is stated there that evidence must be relevant to the case. So, dapat meron siyang connection sa kaso. And material. So, dapat importante siya. Meron siya dapat pinuprove sa issue doon sa court, di ba? Sa trial. So, it must be relevant and material for it to be admissible. So, yun ang requirement sa evidence. However, in forensic evidence, aside from that, so meron pa siyang standard na requirements. So, dapat, isa pa dyan na karagdagan is, dapat yung expert witness din. Dapat ma-qualify nung expert witness yung sarili niya bilang expert witness. So, how will he qualify himself in front of the judge and in front of the defense lawyer? So, yan, sasabihin niya Your Honor, I am Police Staff Sergeant so-and-so. I have studied ballistics for 10 years now. I have studied ballistics in the United States. And tapos after ng mga yun, syempre magsasabi rin siya ng mga experiences niya. And it is best kung makapagsasabi rin siya ng mga convictions niya. So, itadagdag niya yun. And I have testified in court for almost 10 years too. And in all my 10 years, my participation in court proceedings resulted in the conviction of how many accused. So, yan ang sasabihin ng expert witness. Dapat ma-testify niya. Dapat masatisfy niya yung requirement at masatisfy niya yung defense counsel and at the same time, judge before he could testify as an expert witness to later on present his forensic evidence. So, take note, by the way, that in criminal case, we have two types of witnesses. We have the ordinary witness. Then the second type of witness, we have your expert witness. So what is the basis of the testimony of your ordinary witness? So the basis of testimony of your ordinary witness is based on his personal knowledge of the crime. So ano yung buong yung na-witnessan niya on that crime? So the personal knowledge of a witness or an ordinary witness about a particular crime is reference to what he has sensed with the use of his five senses. So, ang basihan is yung mga senses natin. So, ano ba yung five senses natin? So, we have sense of sight, mata, sense of smell sa ilong, sense of taste sa dila, sense of hearing sa tenga, and sense of touch, nararamdaman, di ba? So, yun yung basihan ng testimony ng ordinary witness, wherein the basis of testimony of your expert witness is based on his expert opinion on a particular issue under scrutiny in a particular case. So yan, dyan napapasok yung ating forensic sciences. So lahat ngayon ng mga expert natin, forensic science expert, kung magte-testify yan sa court, ang tawag sa kanilang testimony is expert opinion. So, expert opinion. Moving on, in 1923, in 1925, we have Philip Gravel and Calvin Goddard. So, they developed the comparison microscope. So, Calvin Goddard here again is the father of forensic ballistics. And at the same time, he coined the term forensic ballistics, and he took part in the invention of the comparison microscope used in firearms identification, used specifically in comparing shells and bullets recovered at the crime scene compared with the test bullet. So, crime scene bullet versus the test bullet. And another thing is pwede rin naman na the crime scene bullet juxtaposition or side by side compared with the cartridge case for pistols. Ngayon, kung mag-match yung striations nila as one, kumbaga pag pinagdugtong yung bullet sa spent shell, tapos so, iisa yung marking nila, pareho yung mga striations nila, so the conclusion is the spent shell and the bullet recovered at the crime scene was fired by one and the same firearm. So, yun. Yun ang magiging conclusion. And in 1929, so 1929, we don't have 1929 in your book. What we have is 1930. So in 1930, prototype polygraph, which was invented by John Larson in 1921, developed for use in police station. So meron siyang prototype polygraph. So means to say, hindi pa siya yung polygraph machine na ginagamit natin ngayon. Prototype pa lang siya. So as early as 1930, we have a prototype polygraph to determine whether or not a witness, a complainant, or an accused under the polygraph is lying or not. So yan ang i-detect ng polygraph machine. So following 1930, we have 1931, John Glaister from 1856 to 1932, he published his landmark book on hair analysis. So he now published the step-by-step procedures on how to examine hair and how to properly determine whether or not that hair belongs to human or to animals. And in 1932, we have here the FBI, Pure Federal Bureau of Investigation, established its own crime laboratory. Now one of the foremost crime labs in the world. This same year, a chair of legal medicine at Harvard was established. So it is in 1932 where the FBI had its own crime laboratory. And at the same time, the same year, chair of legal medicine at Harvard was established. So when we say chair, we are speaking of the chairman. So chair of legal medicine at Harvard was established. The position for a legal medicine expert at Harvard was established. And in 1954, Indiana State Police Captain R.F. Borkenstein develops the breath analyzer. So what is the use of your breath analyzer? Breath analyzer is used to determine the presence of alcohol in your breath. So it is usually used in traffic violations. So traffic enforcement, traffic management and enforcement. So pagka may isang driver na pagiwang-giwang yung pagmamaneho, kaya kung hindi man pagiwang-giwang pero may violation, sisitain itong pulis. And at the same time, pagka medyo naamoy ng pulis na parang may amoy alak, o kaya kung hindi niya man naamoy, pero pagiwang-giwang yung driver, pwede niyang i-request for the conduct of preliminary test. So ano ba yung mga preliminary test? So palalakarin niya kung makakapaglakad ba ng straight. Diba? Kung hindi man, patatakbuhin niya. Kung straight yung takbo. So those are examples. So patatayuin niya gamit ang isang paa. Siyempre, kasi pagkalasing yan, medyo mahirap magbalanse. Pagka isang paa lang, di ba? So balancing. Yun. And still, pagka pumasa siya doon, pero medyo alanganin pa rin kayo, then the next is the use of breath analyzer. So sa kanyo na lang gagamitin yung breath analyzer as a confirmatory test. Pwede rin pala na kahit na hindi niya mapasa niya man o hindi, pwede niyo pa rin gamitan ng breath analyzer test to confirm. But according to our law, gamitin niyo muna yung sobriety test, sobriety test. So, sobriety test, yun yung magbabalance muna siya. Tapos, o kaya maglalakad, straight line. Ayan, so pag napasa niya yun, means to say, kayang-kanyang magmaneho. Pero kung hindi niya napasa yun, kailangan mag-undergo siya ng breath analyzer test. So, pagka nag-positive yung breath analyzer test niya, then, idadagdag nyo sa violation niya. Driving under the influence of liquor. O okay lang sana kung liquor lang yan. Huwag naman sana under the influence of legal drugs. Automatic, makukulong na rin yan. Not unless he is a first-time offender, pwede siyang ma-rehabilitate. And in 1960, we have a sound spectrograph. So, sound spectrograph. What is the use of sound spectrograph? It records voices. So, it records and plays voices. So, a sound spectrograph discovered to be able to record voices. Voice prints began to be used in the investigation of crimes and as court evidence from recording of phone answering machines or tape recorders. So, pagka tape recorders naman yan, it was taken or recorded during interview or interrogation. And in 1967, the FBI established the National Crime Information Center, the NCIC, First National Crime System. It is a computerized national filing system on wanted people, stolen vehicles, and weapons. So, yung mugshot natin, hindi natin mugshot yun, yung mugshot ng criminal, ng mga arrested persons, ina-upload dito. And at the same time, you know for a fact na ang process, pagka ang isang tao nakasuhan, tapos based on the judge who examined the case, especially if the evidence is strong, he will issue a warrant of arrest for the arrest of the accused. And whenever they issue a warrant of arrest, they always copy furnish FBI. So parating copy furnished ang FBI. And what the FBI does is they upload the personal circumstances of that wanted person into the system, into the National Crime Information Center system. So i-upload nila dyan yung pangalan, complete name, complete address, and so on and so forth. Ngayon, pagka naman na-arrest itong wanted person, i-upload pa rin sa system yung mugshot niya. Yan. And also, included here is the database of stolen vehicles. Pagka nabiktima yung isang tao ng carnapping, ipapablatter niya yan sa nearest police station. And aside from that, pagka dito naman sa Pilipinas, sa nearest police station, tapos aside from that, mas maganda, i-coordinate na rin niya sa Highway Patrol Group. Yan. And pwede rin i-coordinate sa LTO. Kasi baka mamaya, pagka ginamit yung sasakyan sa paggawa pa ng mas mabigat na krimen, ay dawit yung owner pagka hindi niya talaga pinablatter yun. Mas magandang ipablatter. And also, weapons. So, nakarecord din dito yung mga weapons. In 1974, technology developed at Aerospace Corporation in the United States to detect gunshot residue, which can link a suspect to a crime scene and can show how close that suspect was to the gun. So this is the purpose of gunshot residue. What is gunshot residue? These are gunpowder residue. So whenever a firer or a shooter squeezes the trigger of a firearm, there's always a gunpowder escape na mapupunta sa kamay ng shooter, especially if the firearm is a revolver. Sa open kasi yung cylinder. So, in most cases, pagka revolver yung baril, mostly nagpapositive sila sa gunshot residue. So, pagka may pumunta sa kamay, for us to determine whether or not a person has recently fired a gun, dapat mag-undergo siya ng paraffin test o candle test, candle wax test. Yan. So, papatuluan yung kamay niya ng mga kandila na natutunaw habang masusunog yung kandila. And after that, tatanggalin yung kandila. Ngayon, i-observe yung kandila kung mayroon siyang purplish na mga spot. So, kung mayroong ganun, means to say, yun na yung gunshot residue. There's a presence of gunpowder on the hand of the person who undergone paraffin test. So, ang possibility is that person fired a gun. Yan ang paraffin test. And on the other hand, pagka naman yung shooter ay pinutok yung barrel in front of the target, tapos mayroong gunpowder residue sa target. Now, based on the pattern of the gunshot residue on the target, pwede nating malaman yung distance ng shooter from the victim. So, pagka intact yung gunpowder residue pattern, pagka intact, means to say, pagka magkakalapit, malapit din yung distance ng shooter nung binaril niya yung biktima. Pero habang palayo ng palayo, magdi-disperse din at magdi-disperse. So, magkakalayo ng magkakalayo yung distansya ng mga gunpowder residue. So, yan. So, pagka nagkalayo na yung mga gunpowder residue sa damit ng biktima, means to say, mas malayo yung distansya ng shooter. At kapag bullet entrance wound na lang ang nakita pero walang gunshot residue, means to say, napakalayo na nung shooter. Hindi na inabot nung gunpowder residue o gunshot residue. And in 1974, detection of gunshot residue by SEM or EDS is developed. In 1975, first fingerprint reader installed at the FBI. So when we say fingerprint reader installed, we are talking of a software. So when we say software, program siya. Downloadable. Hindi natin nahahawakan ang software. Hardware ang nahahawakan natin. So, computer has two parts, di ba? The software and the hardware. So, ano yung mga hardware? Hardware has many parts. Meron siyang monitor, meron siyang keyboard, meron siyang CPU, meron siyang AVR. So, yun yung mga basic hard parts ng computer. Ang software naman na part ng mga computer is yung mga applications niya, yung mga downloadable na ini-install natin sa program niya. Yan, software. So it cannot be, we cannot touch it, but we can visually see it through its monitor. Pero hindi natin mahawakan kasi nasa monitor nga. Not unless we have printed it. So in 1977, FBI institutes the automated fingerprint identification system. So the office was now instituted. So office, by the way, is a database system. So pagka database system yan, means to say it collects all the fingerprint of all available persons who voluntarily gave their fingerprint. Tapos ngayon, maa-upload sa system, which is now called the office. Yan. So, how do we acquire fingerprint patterns or fingerprint of persons? In the Philippines, we acquire fingerprints through mugshot and booking of arrested persons. Yan. So, that's first. So, lahat ng mga nahuhuli na arrested persons kinukuhanan ng mugshot and also kinukuhanan din ng mga fingerprint. So, yan, yung mugshot and fingerprint, ina-upload sa magkaibang system ng PNP. So, yung mugshot i-upload sa e-RUG gallery. So, yan yung mga pictures or mugshots ng mga arrested, accused, and wanted persons. At dito naman, yung office naman, ang i-upload naman doon is yung mga fingerprint ng arrested persons. So, aside from the fingerprint of arrested person, what are also the reference or how do we also acquire fingerprints which we upload to the system? So, ito, di ba, every time na kumukuha tayo ng police clearance and ng NBI clearance, kinukuhanan tayo or requirement ng form is yung filling up of, mayroon siyang form na pinipilapan. Tapos, nilalagay din natin yung fingerprints natin doon. So, pwedeng yung makaluma through the ink system. Pero ngayon, mayroon na rin yung digital system. Yung ilalapag mo na lang yung finger mo sa sensor, dadaanan ng scanner, tapos i-register na rin niya yung mga main points ng fingerprint. Ayun. So, those are the ways on how we could upload fingerprint into the office system. And next to the office, in 1979, we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They implemented first automatic fingerprint identification system. So when we say automatic, it is the system who detects matches. Diba, pagka dito sa Pilipinas, tao ang nag-detect ng match or no match between suspected fingerprint or crime scene fingerprint and the sample fingerprint of your suspect. Mano-mano yun. Pero doon sa ibang bansa, specifically at in Canada, automatic na system ang nagdi-detect ng fingerprint. And in 1984, we have DNA fingerprinting techniques developed by Sir Alec Jeffreys. So, DNA, Sir Alec Jeffreys. And in 1987, in England, Colin Pitchfork becomes the first criminal identified by the use of DNA. So ito, he is the first person who was identified through DNA evidence. It is Colin Pitchfork in England. But in the United States, it is Tommy Lee Andrews, who was the first person to be convicted through DNA evidence. Yan. So, Tommy Lee Andrews. In 1993, Dobert versus Merrill Doe Pharmaceuticals establishes new rules for the admission of scientific evidence into the courtroom and alters the Fry rules set in 1923. So whenever we speak of pharmaceuticals, the product of pharmaceuticals are medicines, diba? Drugs. Yan. So possible that this case is related to overdosage or poisoning. And in 1996, National Academy of Science announces DNA evidence is reliable. So DNA evidence is reliable in personally identifying a person. That's according to the National Academy of Science in 1996. And in 1999, FBI established the integrated automated fingerprint identification system. So, AFIS ulit. So, inadapt ng FBI yung AFIS. Cutting down fingerprint inquiry response from 2 weeks to 2 hours. So, ito ngayon yung difference niya kasi meron ng yung FBI nakaran na yung fingerprint dyan, di ba? Since nung 1977 pa. However, ang ginawa nila nung 1999 is instead of the process to be taken up within period of 2 weeks, instead of 2 weeks yung processing, naging 2 hours na lang. So, medyo at least umikli. So, instead of 2 weeks, naging 2 hours yung processing ng Office. And in 2001, oops, wala na palang time, 2001. In 2001, technology speeds up DNA profiling time from 6 to 8 weeks to between 1 to 2 days. So, yan. So, DNA profiling now takes, instead of it being 6 to 8 weeks to process, it became 1 to 2 days na lang yung DNA profiling. So, at least napapabilis. And in 2007, Britain's Forensic Science Services develops the online footwear coding and detection system. This helps police to identify footwear marks quickly. So, uh, Britain can now identify your specific footwears. So, kung may napuntahan yung sapatos mo, alam nila kung nasaan ka. So, nakatrack na yung mga footwears nila. Pwedeng may barcode na, kumbaga. And in 2008, a way for scientists to visualize fingerprints even after the print has been removed is developed, relating to how fingerprints can corrode metal surfaces. So, corrode here means rusting. Yan. So, it is a chemical reaction. Why? Bakit magkukorrode ang metal na nadapuan ng fingerprint? Because of our fingerprint content. So, our fingerprint content is sodium. Kumbaga, sweat, di ba? Yung sweat natin, coming from our pores, meron siyang sweat. And yung sweat is composed of sodium component, Na, in your table of elements. And this sodium causes corrosion. Yan. So, siya yung dahilan kung bakit uh, nangangalawang ang mga bakal. Corrosion. Salts. Rain acid has salts, di ba? Rain acid also causes corrosion. And in 2011, Michigan State University developed software that automatically matches hand-drawn facial sketches to mugshots stored in databases. So whenever there's a crime, pagka hindi nakuhanan ng pangalan yung perpetrator, hindi nakuhanan ng CCTV, ipapadescribe natin yung itsura niya according to how the witness can recall the facial structure of the perpetrator. And ngayon, habang dinidescribe nung witness, malapad ba ang ilong, malapad ba ang noo, malaki ba ang mata, bilugin ba ang mata, or almond eyes ba, medyo diamond, singkit ba ang mata, mataba ba ang pingping, o manibis, mahaba ba ang baba o hindi, mabalbas ba o hindi, pango ba. So yun lahat. Habang dinidescribe ngayon ng witness, is ini-sketch rin ng ating sketcher. And after that, the sketch will be uploaded into the system to find its match mugshot. So, pag na-detect niya yung kamukha niyang mugshot, then this is now the suspect. This is how the suspect looks like. And in 2011 still, Japanese researchers developed a dental X-ray matching type. So when we say dental X-ray matching type, our subject is teeth, and we use X-ray to acquire a data. Yan. So dental X-ray matching system. This system can be automatically matched or can automatically match dental X-rays in a database and makes a positive match in less than 4 seconds. So it only takes 4 seconds to determine whether or not a particular dental X-ray matches a different or sample X-ray, dental X-ray. Yan. So it only takes 4 seconds. So that's all, ladies and gentlemen. We have completed our discussion on criminology and forensic science. Next meeting, we will be discussing segment 5 under page 111, criminology and penology. So same with the things we have previously done. If in case you have a question or you have sets of questions, write them down and you may send it through our Facebook group messenger or through our we don't have Viber, but through our Google Class. Yan. Pero kung nakakahiya kayo, ay nahihiya kayo, yan, pwede nyong isend through PM, personal message. Or pwede nyo rin namang tanungin before we start with our lecture next session. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and see you next week.